All right. So with Oshid Bays, we were learning um, that tefillah is the main avodah. That's what we were learning. That tefillah is the main avodah. The main avodah is the avodah tefillah. And are you able to see the screen?
Yeah, I see screen.
Yeah.
I don't see
Okay.
you. It's okay.
One second. That tefillah is the main avodah. And now he's going to say that within tefillah itself. Oh, oh, my picture wasn't there. Okay.
Yeah.
In tefillah itself, um, the tefillah bisman hagolus now is even greater. He's going to explain how the avodah and how the davening during the time of golus, the level of avodah, because in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, avodah was mainly korbanos. Today, mainly avodah is davening. So he says that Yud Beis, Behine Nizbayir Le'il Soif Siv Gimel. In the end of Siv Gimel was explained earlier, She'iker Ha'inyan Di Iskafia V'Ishapcha, that the main idea of Iskafia, subduing, struggling, and also in the parentheses is Hapcha, turning over things, V'Ham Shocha, Shal Yidei and that we draw down through the level of Iskafi and Ishapcha hu bisman hagolus. That is in the time of exile. That's during Golus, is when is the main Iskafia. So Lahoyir, so the Rebbe wants to say Shagam Inyan Zeh. Also, this idea that bisman hagolus is the main time of this Hamshoche. This idea is also mudgesh betfilah. It's also emphasized in the davening. In the davening that we're discussing over here, also in the davening. That's a Tzedek b'Maimer Hanal, as the Tzemach Tzedek explains in the above Maimer. Shahatefilo bizman hagolus hinailis yoiser mehatfilo shebizman habayis. I'm not talking about the korbanos, but even the davening. The davening during the time of exile is on a higher level than the davening than in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Ukameshakosuv Admur Hazokin, as the Alter Rebbe writes, Shebizman Hagolus, that in the time of Golus, Hamalchus Atzmo hi Bechinas Tefillah. The Malchus itself is the level of Tefillah, which means that during the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the level of tefillah came through Zoh. In order to get the Eir Ein Sof to Malchus, it went through the level of Zoh. Zoh gave to Malchus. But now Malchus itself is tefillah, which means that Malchus itself gets directly from the Ein Sof. The Bisman Habayis, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, Hamalchus shoyeles tzrocheho mizo bailo. Malchus asks its need from Zo, her husband. Zo is the Baal. Malchus is the Isha. She's the Makabel. So she asks the Malchus in order to get the needs, in order to get the Ein Sof, comes through Zo. I know. Shahamshoch hasoir shelamaylo mihishtalshelus b'malchus hu al yidei zo. So how do we draw down the oir, the light which is higher than ishtalshelus to malchus? It is through zo. That's through the bailo that malchus gets. That's in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Bisman hagolus, but in the time of exile, ein tzorich lahamshich derech hamides elyonis. She doesn't need malchus to draw down by means of the supreme midas. So, meaning that it's tefillah itself, meaning malchus itself reaches up to the highest level, to the level of higher than Ishtalshlus, not through Zo, not through Bible. So, Mevayir, that Tzemach Tzedek, Bahamaimer, Inyan Zeh, Ba'avodas Ha'odom. That Tzemach Tzedek explains this idea in the service of the person. How the difference is by the person in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Over there, he got all the Giluyim from the higher levels. Because it was a time of revelation, there was godliness in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. So the person was inspired. The neshama Abba V'yira inspired the person. But in the time of Golus, over there, it's not so easy anymore because there is a blockage. Over there, sort of, bounces off. It's an Ur-Chayzer. So look inside. Shebizman habayis, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, halos haneshama shebeguf l'shorsho shalamaylo. How did the neshama become the neshama that is in the body? How did it go to its root that's above? Because only a part of the neshama is in the body. The nefesh ruach neshama is in the body, but the other ones, the chaya, the yichida, that's still surrounding, that's above. How did the neshama in the guf reach the root above? Through the love and the fear of Hashem that the neshama and the guf had, it was able to tap in to the part of the neshama which is higher than the body. That was in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. But Bisman HaGolus, in the time of Golus, he quotes the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Kasher yoinosi bechagvei hasela b'seiser hamadreges. Yoinosi is an expression of Knesset Yisrael, the beloved of Doidi, of the Hashem. They find themselves, Yoinosi, my pigeon, my beloved, is bechagvei hasela, in the cracks of the stone, b'seiser hamadrega. It's running away and it's hiding, which means we're not in a good state. We're in a hidden state. We're in the cracks of the stones, which means in avodah shaha'ava v'yira the haneshama ein behester. The love and the fear of the soul are hidden, because in the time of Golus there is no expression, there is no visible Abba v'yira. So what does the pasuk say? Eitzahi. So what's the advice? So how do we connect if we are in the low madregas? Hareini es marecha. Show me your image. Amare hu is there. A mirror. Show me a mirrored image. A mirror image means it's a returning light. You don't get it directly, but you get a reflection. You get an chayzer, which is, he says, ha'avoida the bechol moedecha. Because there is a blockage, and because it says that hamadreges, there's no ava v'yira, then this elicits the avoida, brings out a service of bechol moedecha, shelemailo mehagbola, which is higher than limitations. Shemis oireres alidei ha'ester. That is aroused, that is awoken up, because there is a block. So then it goes, and because of the block, you dig in deeper to the avodah of higher than limitation, because there's limitations over there, and the limitations are the blocks, don't allow you avavira. So you go deeper till you get b'chol me'idecha, beyond limitation. Wow. Al yidei zeh ha'alos ha'neshama l'shorsho. Through this, the neshama goes up to its root. Hibederech diluk. It's like a jump over. It's not in an orderly, like when there's ava v'yira, because with the avodah that's higher than limitation, b'chol me'idecha, you sort of jump over to get to the essence of the neshama not in an open, revealed way that there's a gilui of Avavira, but the halal zu, this elevation that comes through the returning light, through the b'chol meidecha, ilamayla yoser mehallah shal yidei Avavira. That's a higher elevation than the elevation that comes from Avavira shehi b'seder v'hadraga, which is in an order and a step-by-step way. So we have here the avoda in Zman Hagolus, even reaching stronger and higher than the avoda in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, because the Beis Hamikdash, where there's open avavira over there, it's a gradual, it's a step-by-step. It's in a way of ishtalshus, but here's in a way of diluk, because since there's a block and you have to bring in the level which is higher than medida v'hagbola b'chol ma'idecha, so you bring into a higher elevation and you reach the neshama in a way which is higher, in a way of diluk. Yesh loymar. So the Rebbe explains now. So what's the in the Maimer, the Friedrich Rebbe says, he says, the Zesha Eimer Maimer Hanal, in the above Maimer, he says, Shel al Yidei HaHester Shabizman HaGolus, Boyim L'chol L'b'chol Me'edecha Shogilu HaYichida. So he said that through the blockage that is in the time of Golus, then you come to B'chol Me'edecha. What is B'chol Me'edecha? Shehu Gilui HaYichida. That is revealing the Yichida of the Neshama, and that is revealed through the Avodah B'chol Me'edecha. So what's the difference between that Gilui of Yichida that comes in the time of the Beis Hamikdash and the Gilui of the Yechida that comes in the time of Golus? It seems like through the Avodah, you come to the level of Yechida. So the Rebbe explained that there's a difference. Av shehachibur de naran im chaya, the chibur of nefesh ruach neshama, which is in the body, the part of the neshama in the body, with the level of chaya, gam bizman habayis, even during the time of the Beis Hamikdash. How do we connect, bring down the nefesh ruach neshama and chaya? We need a level which is higher than both, as he said earlier, kinal shom. To bring down the chaya to the naran, you need to a place from yechida which is even higher. So but over there it's different, because hu shebizman ha'avodah habayis, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, ha'avodah atzmo, the avodah is he beikir ha'avodah shemitzad nefesh ruach nechshama v'ha'avodah shemitzad chaya. You have the two avodas. You have avodah, it's from nefesh ruach neshama, the neshama in the guf, and the avodah mitzad chaya. Ela shachibur, the base avodas elu al yidei hamshachas hayichida. How do you connect the avodah of chaya and the avodah of naran? You mamshich a higher level. You bring down the yichida. The avodah is naran. The avodah is chaya. And you connect them through Hamshachas HaYichida. Bisman HaGolus she'avodah atzmo hi ba'ofen the Mesiras Nefesh. But in the time of Golus, the avodah is a avodah of Yichida. It's an avodah of Mesiras Nefesh. HaYichida atzmo hi begilui. The Yichida itself is revealed. It's not only that the Yichida connects the Naran with the Chaya, but the Chaya, Yichida itself, is revealed in His word. That's the Maila of the time of Golus. So the Rebbe explains how the Chaya expresses itself higher in the time of Golus, and also how the davening in the time of Golus, because it's a level of Hester, it's a level of hidden, it actually brings out in a way b'chol meidecha, in derech diluk, not in a way of revelation. So this is the Maila even in Golus. So the fact that the Yechida, the Rebbe is going to say, Yeshid Gimel, that comes begilui, that it's open in Golus, so that's an advantage for the level of the neshama, because ultimately everything, the whole neshama, is for the benefit of the guf. So if the is an expression of the Yechida in the guf, so that means that the Yechida has accomplished its goal, because it's all for the guf. Yud Gimel. V'yesh leimar, so we can say, Dal Yidei Sha Yechida Bo Begilui Al Yidei Ha'avodah Shebizman HaGolus, through the fact that the Yechida comes revealed when the person works in the time of Golus. Nase Bo Ilui, that brings about in the Yechida, brings an Ilui. The fact that you bring down the Yechida in this world, that the part of the neshama which is higher than the guf, and you bring down b'chol ma'idecha, you bring down the Yechida in the guf, so that makes the Yechida on a higher level. Because the ultimate intent and purpose of everything in the world, and also of the soul, everything is because the service of the person. Therefore, everything is for the person. So the fact that you reveal the Yechida through Avodah, you reveal the Yechida. That's an elevation for the Yechida as it's on its own, because now it's accomplished its purpose. Its purpose is to bring it down into the world. The Rebbe says, we can tie this to that which we say before the davening. We say, Ashreinu matov chalkeinu, umanoyim goyrolenu, umayofa yerushoseinu. So basically we're saying here three things. How fortunate we are, how good is our lot, how sweet is our goyrol, and how beautiful is our inheritance. These are different levels of the neshama that the person has in himself. He has a level of neshama which is called Yerusha, which is the essence of the soul, which is the level, the Rebbe will explain, the level of Yechida. And you also have the level of Chaya, that's the Goyrolenu, and Chelkeinu is Nefesh Ruach and Neshama. He's going to explain, these are the three levels that the person talks about when he says, Matov Chelkeinu, Manoim Goyrolenu, Mayofe Rushusei. My father-in-law, the Rebbe, the one who's Yortzeit, Yitzhvat, explains in a mimer that opens up with these words. Gimul ho'inyonim, the three ideas, the chelek, portion, goyrel, the lottery, v'yerusha, and inheritance. Bahagdim, by first introducing shebenefesh ha'odom beis madreges, that in the soul, we're first going to talk about these levels of Chaya, Yechida, and Naran as it is in the soul. So, in soul of the man, there is two general madreges. Zeh shehu chai be'etzem, that in essence it's a living thing, that it's alive. And the other part of the nefesh is v'zeshu chai lahachis, that it's living and it vitalizes and it brings to life others. So it's living in itself. That's one aspect. And then it's chai lahachis. Hainu, that means hachayis shemispashet mehanefesh lahachis es haguf. That is the vitality of the life force that spreads out from the soul to give life to the body. So there's one, the chai be'etzem, that would be the level of yichida. And then you have a chayis that expands, but in two ways. You have two steps in the chayis that expands into the body. Chayis kloli shemechayes kol evore haguf b'shava. You have a general life force which vitalizes all limbs of the body equally. They're all alive. It's not measured each limb separately, but it's just a general energy of chayis, of life in the whole body. And then you have a chayis proti. You have an individual, a detailed vitality, life force, shemislabish b'chol ever lefi inyone, which dresses up in every limb according to its whatever it is, to its idea. So there's a specific and there's a general, and then there's the fact that it's chai by itself. This is in the nefesh that comes down to the guf, but the same thing is with the neshama. The nefesh, this is the nefesh that vitalizes the body physically, but there's also the level of the soul that vitalizes. Similarly, is in the neshama, the godless. Gimel madreges elu. It has similar to these three steps. There's the etzem haneshama. That's what we call, as the Rebbe will say, chaya. And then you have bezeh shemiyida beguf b'nefesh hativis ba'efen kloli, and the fact that it shines in the body and in the natural soul in a general way. And the reason it's in a general way is because the body isn't a vehicle of vishaguf and nefesh hativis, because the body and the natural soul einom kelim la'oirezeh aren't vessels. They are not receivers. They cannot accept la'oirezeh, that oil. That would be like the level, as the Rebbe will say, of the level of chaya. It doesn't really dress up inside. Then you have the third level of the neshama, shemislabeshes b'haguf and nafshei hativis, that it dresses up in the body and in the natural soul. And explains there shegimel inyonim elu. These three aspects, hem chelek, goyrel v'yerusha. That's the chelek, goyrel v'yerusha. So the Rebbe explains the chelek, goyrel v'yerusha would be Yerusha would be the etzem haneshama, and Goydel will be the yechid, the yechida, the chaya, and Yerusha would be yechida, and Goydel will be chaya, and the chelik will be nefesh ruach neshama. V'yesh loymar shegimel inyonim elohem b'derech klal. So in a general way, these three aspects are nefesh ruach neshama and chaya and yechida. Those are three. He explains over there, our inheritance, meaning it's an inheritance. That's the point of Judaism, which every Jewish person possesses. That's the nekuda. That's the level of yechida. We all have the yedua, because it's known shenekudas hayahadus hiyayichida shebenefesh. That point of Yiddishkeit is the Yechida of the Nefesh. Umevayir Shom. So, explains there, so why is the order, if Yerusha seems to be the highest level, so maybe you should be first saying Yofa Yerushaseinu, and then say Goyrolenu, and then say Chalkenu. Why does he start with Chalkenu and then go and ends Goyrolenu and then Yerushaseinu? So he explained the reason why he counts here these three levels in the order of from below to above. He says he starts off with Chalkenu and then goes to Geralenu and then goes to Yerushaseinu. Starts with Nefesh Ruach and Neshama, goes to Chai and then to Yechidahu. Kitachlis HaKavonahu, I mean, that's the way the Rebbe explained it, the three Madregas, is Kitachlis HaKavonahu, because the ultimate intent is Shegam Hagilu de Nekudas HaYahadus, that also the revelation of that point of Yiddishkeit, that level of Yerushaseinu, Hagam Shehi Yerusha Shehu Davar Haba Meilu. We call it Yerushaseinu, it's our inheritance, because it's an inheritance which comes on its own. An inheritance is not something that you work for. It's not something that you earn. It's just given to you. So being that you are part of the Yidden, you have, every Yid has that. That's why it's a Yerusha. But still, notwithstanding the fact that it comes automatically, it's a Yerusha, that should still be through the service, the work of the person with his own power. So it comes last. We don't just get it. You start with Matov Chalkenu, and then you go to Gedolenu, and then comes down to Yerushaseinu. So because we want it in that order, that's why it comes last. So the Rebbe explains in this ice over here that there is the three levels, both in the relationship of the nefesh that vitalizes the body. You have the etzem hachayis, and then you have the ispashtus hachayis that comes down in two ways. Similarly, the neshama that vitalizes the body comes down in the three levels of Matev Chalkeinu, Anoim Garaleinu, Ayofe Yerushaseinu, but all which is the neshama, which is the level of Yechida, which is a Yerusha, and then you have the level of that comes in a makiftika way because it doesn't come down according to the details of the limbs. Then you have the level of Matev Chalkeinu, which is the level of Nefesh Ruach and Neshama. It all comes, and then it brings about the level of Yechida through Avodah, Matev Chalkeinu, Anoim Gerolenu, afterwards, Mayof Yerushaseinu. And now the Rebbe is going to get in more to the Avodah part of the Maimer, saying that Davke, when we want to daven, and Davke, when we want to do the right thing, all of a sudden the Yetzer comes and tries to put obstacles. Yudalit. Mamshech by Maimer, as it continues, the Maimer, the Yitzrei Shel Odom, the inclination of the person, Mizgaber Olav, is overpowers the person, Latridai, to confuse him, Ulevalveloi, to make it difficult and to confuse him, Davke, when he wants to serve, when he wants to daven, when he wants to work to connect with Hashem through the davening, so then the Yetzer Hara comes and it strengthens itself to make it difficult and to confuse him. And Davke when he wants to do that, like we see, practically speaking, Davke when it comes the time of serving Hashem, whether it's through learning Torah or davening, or mitzvah, or he has to do a mitzvah. So Oz Nidmaloi, so then he appears, it seems to him, Ashedavke B'Shozu, that specifically at that time, he must do something which is very important to him. He has to go daven, he has to go learn, he has to do a mitzvah. Exactly at that point, he feels that, oh, there's something so important that is so important that he has to do it. The machshavos elu, the nefesh habahamis, these thoughts that come from the animal soul, they are specifically coming to disrupt, to confuse the godly soul. They're coming to interfere with the godly soul. It's simple, the evidence. V'haraya. Why is it that Dafke, when he wants to daven, that's when he has an important thing to do? Why, when he's just hanging around, he doesn't have any important things to do? But Dafke, when he wants to daven, when he wants to learn, v'haraya, the proof is, shebizmanim achedim, in other times, when he's not in the avodah of Torah, tefillah, mitzvahs, ein neuflim loy machshavos ka'elu. Such kinds of thought don't fall to the person. He doesn't have these kinds of thoughts. So Bapi, so the Rebbe says, Mashin is il siv zayin v'siv yud. And the Rebbe explained earlier in siv zayin and siv yud, showing yonim sheba odom, that those areas, the matters by a person, that what the Friedrich Rebbe explains in chapter 20. So this is what the Rebbe is talking about in chapter 20. This was the Maimer that the Rebbe was given, was explaining chapter 20 of the Maimer Bos Lagani, the final and last ois. So the Rebbe said before that these matters that are explained in this chapter, in chapter 20, and that matters that relate to the person in this chapter, Hemashoidesh Dinyonim Elu Shabailo. This is the root of these matters in the world. So there's in the Maimar, they explained about all the matters of what happens in the world. In Perik 20, he explains about the person. So the Rebbe says, so there's a relationship to what goes on in the world, and here we're explaining how it goes on by the person. Yes, Loimar. So the Rebbe said we can say, why are these thoughts accepted by the person? Doesn't the person realize that it's not true? Doesn't he realize that he's only getting these thoughts, that he's too busy, and that he has other important things to do? Dafke when he wants to learn. Even though he sees that these thoughts come to him, Dafke when he's serving Hashem, Shem says, so from this he should understand, the nefesh habahamis, also from the seichel of the animal soul. He should understand, he should realize that the reason that he has these thoughts, they're just to come to interfere, to confuse him from Torah Avodah. And they're still accepted. Why would he accept them? Oh, so we learned this from the previous prokim that we learned before in the world. That is the idea, the false by the person. That's the falsehood. From this, from the person, evolves the falsehood in the world. He and himself is sheker. He thinks that he has to do things and he knows that he doesn't. And that's a level of sheker by the person. And this evolves the sheker in the world. That the world points and says, oh, I'm an entity. Really, the world is bottled, is no entity. This is explained in the previous chapter. The Rebbe says that this point of the 20th chapter by the person, the sheker by the person, corresponds to the sheker that he was discussing earlier in the Maimer, the sheker of the world. that just like the person comes to the sheker, even though he knows it's not true, that these things that he thinks that he has to do, they're not really, but the sheker ha'olam, that's the sheker for himself. That brings about the sheker of the world, that the world considers itself a sheker. Now, the Rebbe is going to bring down, a lot of time people blame Hashem for things that they are responsible. So, he says a person puts himself in danger, and then he gets hurt, and then he goes and blames Hashem for it. That's what. והנה ידוע מה שכוסו אדמו"ר מהר"ש בהמשך מים רבים תוף ריש ל"ו בתחילוסי. Within that Maimer, in the Hemshech Maim Rabim, in the beginning, it says Allah Posik, Avelis Odom Tesalev Darker, the evilness of the person that misguides his path, that goes on the wrong direction, the wrong path. So it's Avelis Odom, it's his own problem, his own evil, the person's own doing gets him on the wrong path. Ba'al Hashem Yizaf Liboy. But he complains and he gets angry on Hashem. Shekol harois habois la'odom, all the bad that come to the person who atzma gorim lozeh. He causes himself. Gives an example. Odom hamisakin atzmai avur meisrus. Person endangers himself for extras. So he puts himself in danger in order for more than he needs. The kasha koirula oisen, and then when a mishap happens to him, something happens wrong, harehu atzmai gorim lezeh. He himself caused it. He could have been satisfied with bread to eat and a garment to wear. He has what to eat and what to wear. But he wanted extras, so he endangered himself. He said to him is and even with them, it's not only for wanting more than you have. Even if he wants wealth, if he would know, he would really accept that. It would make sense to him. He wants wealth, yes, but he would realize that the wealth comes from the blessing of Hashem. The blessing of Hashem is that makes you wealthy. And the fact that we also need to do work in the natural way, like it says the pasuk, that God will bless you in everything that you do. It's only because Hashem wants that the bracha of above should extend through the natural garments. But it's the bracha of the Eibishter. It's not if the person would realize, appreciate the fact that it's Hashem's blessing and the work that we do naturally is only because the Eibishter wants that it comes through the nature of garment, but it's all about Hashem. Hashem gives it to him. So if he had that recognition, so then how he would work is rag be'oifon the yegia kapecha. He'd only work effort in his hands, yegias kapayim, working with your hands, ushar evorim hachitzonim, and his other outer limbs, he would work with them. But he wouldn't put in the efforts of the brain and the heart to get, because he knows it's from Hashem, so it's not his heart and mind that he has to put into it. He doesn't want to invest. It's just external limbs that he would, his hands and other external limbs. And for sure, he would not endanger his life for this, in order to achieve that, because he knows that it's from the Eibishter. Why would he endanger himself to get his wealth that he's looking for if he knows that it comes from the Eibishter? Yes, the kasher zeh, so we can hide this that the Rebbe Marash says. That he explains in the Hemshech in the beginning, in that Hemshech of that Maimer, Shamayim Rabim Hem Tirdas HaParnosa VaMachshavas Shebinyon Elam Hazeh, that the great waters, those are the preoccupation of one's livelihood and the thoughts that go into matters of this world. That we talked about the pasuk before, that it is the person's own missteps that cause him to confuse his path. He goes the wrong direction. That the bad that comes to the person, he's his own cause. He caused it to himself. This also refers to these great waters that we talked about earlier. The fact that the matters, thoughts about parnasa preoccupy him, and to the extent that they're so taken over by these thoughts that because of that, that he's not able to occupy in Torah and Avodah because he's so overwhelmed with his parnasa. So that's part of what he has caused himself. Because if had he reflected properly, the birchas Hashem hitashir, that it's Hashem's blessings that make you rich. So the thoughts in parnasa matters would not trouble him. This is as far as parnasa and the Maim Rabim, which is the parnasa, the big worries about parnasa. But the same thing is b'negeya l'chol hamachshavas hamatridim es ha'odam, all kinds of thoughts that trouble the person, that take away his peace, and they confuse him, they disturb him from learning and service. Rubam, a majority who al yidei sha'odam hevi atzme lazeh. The person brings himself to it. It's his own fault. Most of the cases is things that you brought upon yourself. Because of the blocks and the obscurity of the world we live in. And also this includes the blocks and the obscure of the guf and nefesh, the body and the animal soul. They themselves, they also, the world in general, and the body and the animal soul, they obscure. If you would not, you bring it on yourself, because just the world and just the guf and nefesh bahamis, k'moishu mitzadatzmai on their own, even gam la'achra yirida the chet eitzadas v'gam bizman hagolus, even after the descent that we went down after the eitzadas and also the time of exile, lo hoyo ma'ilum u'mastir kol kach. It would not block, it would not obscure to that extent. The Iker HaHelen VaHester, he says the main block and the main obscured, what doesn't allow who al yidei sha'odom atzmei goram lozeh, The person himself causes it. That's what he brings. Iveles odom tesalif darkei. Everything of the world is not enough to confuse you really, but you cause yourself when you overreact in the parnasa matters, when you can't learn Torah, or in anything else in the world that it causes you to confuse. It's not the world itself. The world in Nefshabamis on its own, you would be able to do it. They could not cause it, but the person who is the person causes himself. Move on. So for sure we can understand the previous machshavas. He's starting to learn, and he's starting to daven. The Rebbe brought down the Maimer before. All of a sudden, he has something very, very important that he has to do. That's for sure. These thoughts, see that, they come to the person when he's ready to learn and ready to daven. All of a sudden, he gets these thoughts. Where do they come? Here we're talking about in a general way, but especially the Rebbe says the parts that we talked about before, that when a person is learning and davening, he gets this confusing, this interferences from more important things that he has to do. If he would make an accounting, he should say to himself, why do these important things fall into my head? Davke, specifically when I have to do serve Hashem. So he would realize who kikolin yonam, because the whole reason for these thoughts to interfere, to disrupt him from Torah Avodah. That's where they're coming out. If he would realize and appreciate that and understand it with his seichel, azai, so then loy rak shemachshavas ka'elu loy hoyim eskablim etzlei. Then these thoughts would not have been. He wouldn't entertain them. He wouldn't accept them. Not only would he not entertain them, but he wouldn't even get those thoughts, even if he would figure and realize that the whole reason they're coming is to confuse them from Torah and Avodah. So it didn't come. So it turns out that all of the reasons why the person gets distracted and has the difficulty and has the challenges is because he himself doesn't really give himself the right accounting, whether it's with Parnosa, that it comes from Hashem and that he shouldn't stay and it shouldn't take up his mind and it shouldn't really confuse him, or whether when he's davening, all this is something Givelis Odom that the person brings on himself. But then the Rebbe continues in Zayin that through davening and the person has the strong avodah, he take it broader upon himself. It takes him hard to daven and hard to do. But then when he overcomes them, he's able to reach even a higher level, as the Rebbe will continue to explain further on. The Mamshech and Mitzvah will continue it later.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.